Hi, welcome back to Your Quilting Journey. Today we're going to talk about how to cut your fabric. Let's first talk about your cutting mats. So there's lots of different kinds of cutting mats out there. The ones that I recommend are self-healing cutting mats, of course. This one is double-sided. This is a really great one for everything. It's big enough. It is 18 by 24 inches, and you can get all of your fabric on there for the most part. It's a very good one. This is the one we use in my classroom. There's smaller versions like this 18 by 12 inch. This one's good for on-the-go quilting, things like that, but it's not a great one to use for all the time, mostly because you're going to have to shift your fabric back and forth to get the whole cut out of it a lot of the time, and you're more likely to run your rotary cutter right off of the mat. So I wouldn't recommend this size necessarily unless you're traveling. This little guy is fun though, and it is a rotating mat. So when you're cutting out all those little tiny half square triangles and things like that, this one can be really helpful, so you can get those cut without having to pick up and rotate your fabric all the time. And then there's this giant one. This is the one I like to use for the most part. It's in my studio here. It's 35 inches by 23 inches. I don't know why they don't just make it 36 inches. That would be super helpful, but it is a really nice mat. You can get all of your cutting done on this and have room to kind of play around with your fabric so you're not constantly moving your mat around. Second tool is your rotary cutter. So there's several different sizes of rotary cutters. I have the 45 millimeter and this little teeny tiny guy. I'm not sure what the millimeter is on that, maybe 3. I use the 45 almost always. This is my go-to. They have a bigger one than this, but I don't use that one as often as I do this one. So real quick, while we're on this page, let's talk about how to change out your rotary blade. Okay, so you're going to twist this off. Okay, and then push your screw out, and then your rotary blade will come out. Now to throw these away, I usually wrap it in something like a tissue or a napkin or paper towel or something that kind of gives it some coverage, so when it's in the trash it doesn't rip the bag open or cut anyone. And then just kind of tape it in there. And that's an easy way to dispose of your blades. If you're just buying a 1-pack of these replaceable blades, then you could just put your old blade back in here and throw it away. But I buy them 5 at a time, so that wouldn't work for me. I would probably end up putting the dull blade back in there, forgetting. So I'm going to just replace this blade here. So you just put your blade back on, put it back on your rotary, and it will only go one way, so make sure it clicks right in place. Also, the oil on the rotary blades is normal. It's not going to hurt your fabric. I've never had it hurt my fabric or stain it, so don't worry about that. The next tool we're going to talk about is your rulers. So my go-to is a 12.5 inch by 12.5 inch ruler. This one seems to do all the cutting I need, and then it's just available for me. I'm not constantly changing different sizes. It usually comes in a 2-pack with the 6.5 inch rotary or ruler. That one can be helpful for little blocks when you're squaring up. And then the other one I use is this 6 by 24 inch ruler. This one is great for when you're cutting 108 inch fabric, or you're cutting squaring up your quilt at the end, all that kind of stuff, but it's not as necessary as the 12.5 inch block. How to hold your rotary cutter. So your rotary cutter has a little thing on the side that will lift it so that the blade is exposed. When you're done, make sure you push the button to release it. That is a must for all quilters. That's what I tell all my students. you must close your rotary cutter, because if you don't, you may accidentally drop your rotary cutter and it won't just nick your blade, it could cut your foot. Or if you set it down and you grab it and forgot that you had it open, you may cut yourself that way too. So always, always, always close your rotary cutter when you're done using it. So you'll do a cut, close it, put it down. Okay? Just get in that habit right now. I'm just telling you, fair warning. The way you want to hold your rotary cutter is with your thumb on that piece. Okay? No matter where that piece is, that's where you want to hold it. That will give you traction when you're pushing, so you can push with your thumb instead of like this. I see a lot of people put their finger up here to cut like this. The problem with doing it this way is that you may slip, and on a lot of rotary cutters, the blade is right there. So if you slip, your finger's going to get cut. Okay, and it's happened to one of my students before. Well, a couple of them actually. So make sure you hold your rotary cutter properly. Okay, your hand's gripping here just like scissors, and then your thumb's on top so you can push. All right. The other rule is rotary cutter is not a pizza cutter, so you're not going to be going back and forth like this on your fabric. It's one smooth motion forward away from your body, not towards your body. Okay, always away from your body. You may go this way and you may go this way. Do not go this way. I have my teal fabric here, and I'm going to show you a really cool trick. Okay, so I have my fabric folded with the selvage edges together. I know it's hard to tell with this one because they're not white as most fabric is labeled, but I promise I have it the right way. Okay, now let's see if you can see this. At the bottom, do you see how there's like this little wrinkle right here? We want that hammock, is what I call it, at the bottom to hang smoothly. Okay, so back up. Here's the fabric, here's the selvage, here's the selvage. We're going to fold it in half, put your fingers inside of that fold, and then hang it upright like this. Okay, so far so good? Okay, so if you were just to match up the edges where the fabric got cut at the fabric store, you may have a wonky piece like this. See how there's a big wrinkle at the bottom? So we want all of the threads of the fabric to run the exact same way. So we're going to scoot it over, and that's why my fingers are in the middle here so I can scoot it, until the bottom is hanging straight. There's no wrinkle. That way, when you do your first cut, you know you're going to get a good cut with no wrinkles in it, and you won't waste as much fabric. So if you forgot to do that step and you did line up the edges, I'm going to do this side. If you just lined up the edges here where the fabric got cut, there's just a little bit of a wrinkle in there, and I'm going to show you. If you folded that, flip it this way, and then cut it, right here where that fold is, you're most likely going to have a weird wrinkle. I don't know if you can see that, but it's not straight. It kind of goes like this. So when I cut my pieces, that little bump is going to be waste. And we don't want to waste fabric. So again, I'm going to put my fingers inside of the selvages, line it so it's straight. Okay, and then I like just to lay it down on my table, bring the selvages up to that crease, and straighten it out. Okay? Now your first cut is going to be wasteful, unfortunately, but we need to square this up. So I'm going to line up the edge of my ruler, or a line on my ruler, with the bottom of the fabric. And then double check at the top, make sure it's lining up about the same. And then I'll just kind of peek and see where everything is, because some of the fabric is going to be kind of tucked inside and it might be squished over there. It's kind of hard to explain. So this first cut is going to give me a clean edge. So once I do all of my piecing cutting for my pieces of my block, then you'll get a smooth, clean edge, okay? So I'm gonna clean this up, and I'm cutting away from my body again, and I'm right-handed, so I'm cutting on the right side of my ruler, okay? So that is another trick, is trying to learn the math of the ruler. My students seem to have a difficult time with that at first. So now, because we always cut on the side, like I'm right-handed, I'm going to cut on the right side always. I need to rotate my fabric on the other side. So what I do is just kind of bunch up the other end. Even if you have a ton of fabric, you can just kind of pile it up, keep this end nice, and just gently spin it around. Okay? If you have a table that you can do on both ends, then you don't have to spin it around. You can just go to the other side of the table. Okay, and then my biggest cut, you want to start with the biggest cut of your fabric first, because you can always cut it down to smaller sizes. So whatever your pattern is, find the biggest cut for that fabric. So for this teal fabric, my biggest cut is a 6-inch square. So the first thing I'm going to do is a 6-inch strip. Okay, so I'm going to line up my ruler, and it counts this way. So it's backwards than your little kid ruler or a tape measure. It's going backwards. Okay, so I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I'm going to line up this line with my clean cut edge. A lot of times I'll double check at the bottom it's lining up too. As you get your cuts going, especially if you don't have good quality fabric where the threads are running the right way, occasionally your shifting is going to start going like this, and it won't be straight on the bottom anymore. So you want to square that edge back up again like we did at the very beginning, where we cut a little piece off, and then you'll get a straight cut again. So that's one disadvantage again of using lower quality fabric. You're going to have a little bit more waste, but as you get going, you'll get better and better. So I'm going to do this first cut. So I'm going to press down with my hand, and then make sure my thumb's on here. Start at the bottom of the fabric, right next to the ruler, okay? The rotary cutter is up and down. It's not sideways or sideways, because that would get your measurements off. So straight up and down. You're going to press down here first and go straight here. And keep that pressure even and going straight. If you don't, you may not cut through all of the layers of fabric. So there's 4 layers of fabric here right now. But looks good. You cut right. Okay, so I'm going to set that to the side. All right, now we have a 6-inch strip. So I'm going to open it up so it's just double-sided. This is my selvage edge. I need to square that up as well. So I'm going to lay my ruler on there, line up one of the straight lines of the ruler with the top, double check it's straight on the bottom, and then just cut this part of the selvage off all the way down to where those holes are on your fabric. Again, press down with your hand, start behind your fabric on the ruler, press at an even rate, close your rotary cutter, and there you have a clean edge. Okay, so since I just need a lot of 6-inch blocks, I'm going to rotate this so that my edge is on the left. That way I'm cutting on the right, and I'm going to cut out some 6-inch squares. So I'm going to line up the top edge with a line, the side edge with my 6-inch mark, and double check the bottom is lined up as well. That way we know we have a perfect square. Press down evenly with your left hand, and whoop, see, I shifted just a bit. Okay. Get your cut. There, now we have 2 6-inch squares. Isn't that cool? This will help you get your cutting done quicker and easier and more efficient. When you're first starting out, be patient with yourself, take it slow, do some practicing, don't worry about wasting that fabric. You're going to get better and better as you go along. Let's do one more. So I'm lining up the top edge here, the 6-inch on the side, and the bottom. Make sure I have it straight. Give it some pressure here. Start my rotary blade away from my fabric so I get my pressure going as I go straight through it. There we go. 2 more. And then you would just keep doing that for however many blocks you need. If your fabric gets shifted like I just did, if you can see that, just kind of scoot it along like this. I just kind of pushed it back together. Make sure it's still stacked nicely, and then keep going. Okay, everything's lined up. There we go. Now I have 6. So I'm going to open this last piece up. This is where the fold was. Usually when you get to this piece, it's not square anymore, even with all the tricks I showed you. So I will line up the top edge or one of my lines up top, get it as close to 6 as possible, and I have just a little tiny hair hanging off of there. So I will square up this edge and then rotate my block 180 degrees there, and then line it back up with your 6-inch mark and clean it up. That way you're not wasting hardly any fabric. I mean, look, there's the selvage and there's just this little tiny bit. And I have, what, 7 pieces here ready to be sewn. Pretty awesome. Video was helpful for you. Let me know if you have any tips or tricks in the comments below. Talk to you later.